Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something that, well, really affects all of us in the working world: organizational behavior.
Mm,
We've got a pretty comprehensive textbook as our source, and our mission really is to pull out the crucial ideas about how people actually function within organizations.
exactly. And we're going to explore, you know, everything from the big theories trying to explain how organizations work,
Right.
right down to what motivates individuals, how teams operate, what good leadership looks like, and the huge role technology now plays.
Think of this as getting the kind of insider's view on why companies are structured the way they are, what makes a strong company culture,
Yeah.
how organizations handle change, and, ultimately how you can navigate the complexities of your own professional life.
We're aiming for those light bulb moments, hopefully.
Exactly, the kind that make you see your workplace maybe a bit differently without getting bogged down in, overly academic stuff. Okay, so let's dive straight in. Organizational theory and structure first.
Sounds good. So our source introduces several different ways of looking at organizations. There's decision theory, focusing on how choices get made.
Okay.
Then you've got social action theory, which looks more at why people behave the way they do, their intentions, the social context.
Mm.
Action theory digs into individual goals and how people try to achieve them. And then there's postmodernism, which is more critical,
Yeah.
questioning some traditional assumptions.
That's quite a few different lenses to view things through. And within any company, it feels like there are different sort of moving parts, subsystems.
That's right. The text highlights three key ones that are interconnected. First, the technical subsystem. That's the core work, how the product or service actually gets made.
The doing part.
Yeah. Second, the managerial subsystem, which is about coordinating everything, making sure it runs smoothly.
Okay. The oversight.
And finally, the community subsystem. That's the human element, the relationships, the social dynamics. And they all influence each other constantly.
Right. Not separate boxes. It's like a complex machine, all needing to mesh. And speaking of how people interact, this idea of the psychological contract sounds important, even if it's not, like, written down.
Oh, absolutely. The psychological contract, it comes out of social exchange theory. It's essentially this unspoken agreement, mutual expectations between the employee and the organization.
What kind of expectations?
Well, employees expect fair treatment, maybe
Oh.
opportunities, decent rewards, and the organization expects, commitment, effort, loyalty in return.
Mm-hmm.
But if either side feels the other has broken this unwritten deal, well, that can lead to some pretty negative outcomes, like decreased motivation. Maybe people start looking elsewhere.
Yeah, that makes total sense. If you feel the deal's off, you're not going to be fully committed. So how does this theory stuff translate into, the actual structure of a workplace, how it's set up?
Well, the source explores various structures. You've got your classic tall hierarchies, lots of management layers.
It's a pyramid.
Exactly.
Or you can have flatter, more decentralized models spreading out the decision-making. But what's really interesting is the contingency approach.
Contingency, meaning
Meaning there's no single best way to structure things. The ideal structure actually depends on factors like the company's size, the technology it uses, the kind of environment it's operating in, stuff like that.
right. So a small tech startup might need something really different from a huge manufacturing firm.
Yeah.
Makes sense. What about outsourcing? That seems to change structures too.
Oh, definitely. Outsourcing can significantly reshape things. It often creates a more dispersed network, external partners, contractors.
Right.
And while that can save costs or bring in special skills, it changes how you control things. It becomes less about direct management, more about managing relationships, coordinating these external bits.
And raises questions about quality control, maybe. Accountability.
Precisely. Who's responsible when things go wrong? How do you ensure the quality? It adds complexity. Okay, so that's the framework. Now, let's talk about the organization's personality, I guess. The culture. What exactly is organizational culture, according to the source?
It's essentially the shared values and norms, the things that guide how people within the organization interact, both with each other and with the outside world.
Like the unwritten rules of the game.
Exactly. It influences everything, decision-making, how employees are treated. It's a really powerful force shaping behavior.
And I assume it's not just one type fits all. There are different kinds of cultures.
Spot on. One useful model breaks it down into 4 types. First, there's power culture, often centralized. Decisions based on influence.
Maybe.
Kind of. Then there's role culture.
Right.
More bureaucratic, structured, logical, defined roles. Think big, stable organizations.
Yeah, sure.
Then task culture. Project-oriented, get the right people together, get the job done, very flexible.
Sounds like consulting firms, maybe.
Could be. And finally, person culture, where the individual is central. You might see that in, say, partnerships of professionals like lawyers or architects.
Okay, that's a helpful way to think about the different feel of workplaces. What actually causes these cultures to develop? What shapes them?
Oh, a whole bunch of things. The organization's history is big. Its core business matters.
Sure.
Strategy, size, even location can play a part.
Yeah.
And leadership style, obviously. Plus, the wider external environment. It all feeds in.
It's like a recipe with lots of ingredients. And to really understand a culture, you need to look beyond the official mission statement, right? The source mentions a cultural web.
Yes, cultural web is a great tool for that. It gets you looking deeper at the everyday routines, the rituals.
Coffee breaks, Friday drinks.
Could be. Also, the stories people tell, the symbols and logos, the real power structures, not just the org chart, the control systems, the formal structure itself, and crucially, the underlying assumptions or paradigm.
The paradigm.
Yeah, the sort of collective mindset, the taken-for-granted beliefs that shape how everyone thinks and acts. Looking at all those elements gives you a much richer picture.
Absolutely. Values on the wall are one thing, but how people actually behave. And in today's world, national culture must play a huge role, too.
A massive role. Understanding differences in national cultures, people like Hofstede research this extensively, is critical now, especially for managers working internationally.
How so?
Well, what's seen as good management in one country might be totally ineffective, even offensive, somewhere else. Cultural values shape views on authority, teamwork, communication. It all impacts how organizations work globally.
So a one-size-fits-all approach is definitely out. Okay, let's talk change. It's pretty much constant now. Why do people often resist it so much?
Resistance to change. Very common, very human. Our source looks at it in a couple of ways. From a managerial view, it's often seen as negative, right? Hindering progress, self-interest.
Yeah, just being difficult.
But a more pluralistic view suggests resistance can actually be a valuable signal. It might mean the change hasn't been explained well, or people have genuine concerns that haven't been addressed. Maybe the benefits aren't clear to those most affected. It's not always just stubbornness.
That's a really important perspective, not just dismissing it. And the source mentions the almond effect. What's that about?
Yeah, the almond effect is interesting. It refers to how our past experiences and deeply ingrained ways of thinking can make it hard to accept new things, even if the change is good for us.
Like our brains get stuck in a rut.
Kind of. Our brains like familiarity.
Yeah.
Overriding those old pathways takes conscious effort. It's a psychological barrier.
Our brains have a comfort zone. Okay, so we've looked at the organization. Now let's zoom in on the individual. Personality, diversity. What does the source say?
Okay, personality. The text distinguishes between nomothetic and idiographic approaches.
Nomothetic and idiographic. Bit academic.
Yeah, maybe a bit. Nomothetic approaches try to find general personality traits that apply widely, things you can measure across groups. They often see personality as fairly stable, maybe inherited. Think Freud stages or Cattell's factors.
Okay, looking for common patterns.
Right. Idiographic approaches, on the other hand, focus on what makes each individual unique. They see personality as more flexible, shaped more by life experiences.
So common traits versus individual uniqueness. What about the big five? That comes up a lot.
The big five: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism. Yes, that's a major nomothetic model. Research shows these dimensions are quite relevant to work performance, often used in hiring, development.
Gives a framework, I guess. Then there's emotional intelligence, EI. That's more than just being nice, isn't it?
Oh, much more. EI is about understanding and managing your own emotions and recognizing and influencing the emotions of others.
So self-awareness, empathy.
Exactly. Self-awareness, empathy, social skills. The text stresses how vital it is for personal success and for leading and working well with people.
Sounds critical for navigating workplace dynamics. But the source mentions a potential dark side of EI. That sounds intriguing.
Yeah, it's a cautionary note.
Yeah.
While EI is generally positive, it can be used manipulatively. Someone with high EI might be really good at reading and leveraging others' emotions for their own gain.
Yeah.
Potentially unethically.
Wow. So a powerful tool that can be misused. Right. Now, diversity. Huge topic. How is it defined here, and why is managing it well so key?
Diversity here means having People with a wide range of different backgrounds, experiences, perspectives, values, beliefs, all that stuff.
Oh, spectrum.
Exactly. And managing it effectively, which includes things like training to raise awareness, tackle unconscious bias, is crucial.
Mhm.
It creates a place where everyone feels valued, can contribute fully.
And brings benefits to the company, too.
Absolutely. More innovation, better decisions usually come from having that wider range of viewpoints. It's a strength.
So moving beyond just noticing differences to actually leveraging them, how does this individuality mesh with working in groups, though? Can there be tension?
There can be. While cohesive groups are great, there's a risk. Groups develop their own norms, right? If a group becomes too similar, too homogenous, it might develop an us versus them thing towards outsiders or those who are different.
Finding that balance between team spirit and valuing difference sounds tricky.
It is a delicate balance for sure.
Okay, we know who people are. Now what gets them going? Motivation. What's the basic model our source uses?
The fundamental model is pretty straightforward. It starts with needs or expectations. These drive behavior. Behavior is aimed at achieving goals, and performance results from ability and motivation.
Need the skill and the will. Got it. And the source talks about content versus process theories of motivation.
Precisely. Content theories focus on what motivates people, the specific needs, the desires.
Like Maslow.
Exactly. Maslow's hierarchy is a classic example. And interestingly, the source mentions an inverted pyramid idea that higher needs become less limiting once met. Also, Alderfer's ERG theory, existence, relatedness, growth needs, and Herzberg's two-factor theory.
Hygiene factors and motivators.
That's the one. Factors that prevent dissatisfaction versus factors that actually create satisfaction.
Okay, so that's the what. What about process theories?
Process theories look at how motivation works. The thinking process is involved. The source mentions expectancy theory.
Expecting a certain outcome.
Yeah, how our expectations about effort leading to performance and performance leading to reward influence us. Then equity theory, our perception of fairness compared to others.
Am I getting a fair deal?
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
And goal theory, the power of setting clear, challenging goals.
Right. It's the mental calculations we make. Now, what about knowledge workers? Big part of the workforce now. Do they need different things?
Often, yes. Knowledge workers thrive in supportive cultures that value their expertise, encourage creativity, offer stimulating, non-routine work.
Makes sense.
And because their knowledge is their main asset, breaches of that psychological contract we talked about can be especially damaging. Disengagement, less knowledge sharing. It hits hard.
Treat them right, give them space to think. And the job characteristics model sounds practical for designing motivating work.
Very practical. It identifies 5 core job dimensions: skill variety, task identity, task significance, autonomy, and feedback.
Okay.
The idea is jobs high in these lead to critical psychological states.
Yeah.
Feeling the work is meaningful, feeling responsible for outcomes, and knowing the results. And those states boost motivation, satisfaction, performance.
So you can actually design jobs to be more motivating. Cool. Let's move to groups and teams. What's the difference between formal and informal groups?
Simple distinction, really. Formal groups are set up by the organization for specific tasks. Think departments, project teams.
Right.
Informal groups just emerge naturally, based on friendships, shared interests, the lunch crowd, the fantasy football league. And these informal groups can be really important for social needs support, stuff the formal structure might miss.
And they can have a big impact, right? The source mentions the Hawthorne studies.
Yes. The Hawthorne studies were landmark. They showed just how crucial social dynamics are: group values, group norms. They found these could influence behavior and productivity even more than, say, money.
Wow. Work is definitely a social activity.
Absolutely underscored that. We're not just isolated individuals at work.
So how does group performance stack up against individual performance? Are groups always better?
Not always. There are pros and cons. Groups can bring more skills, more perspectives, potentially better problem solving, more creative ideas, maybe more commitment to decisions made together.
Okay, the upsides. What are the downsides?
Well, potential pitfalls include the risky shift. Groups sometimes make riskier choices than individuals would.
Interesting.
Then there's groupthink, where everyone wants harmony so much that critical thinking just goes out the window. And brainstorming isn't always as efficient as you'd think.
So just throwing people together isn't a magic bullet. Needs management. And within teams, do people naturally fall into certain roles?
Yeah, models like the Margers and Teen Wheel suggest that. Effective teams often benefit from having a mix of people who contribute different things: the initiator, the coordinator, the finisher, etc. Understanding these roles helps build balanced teams.
Makes sense. And what about autonomous work groups and virtual teams? Very common now. What are the challenges there?
Autonomous groups, while empowering, can sometimes struggle. Internal conflicts can arise. They might resist changes coming from outside. They can develop norms that don't quite fit the wider organization,
Right, become a bit siloed.
potentially. And virtual teams. Well, communication is a big one. Lack of face-to-face cues. People can feel isolated, less engaged. Monitoring performance is harder. Sharing knowledge effectively across distance is tricky too.
Yeah, managing virtual teams definitely needs specific strategies. Clear communication, building that sense of connection. Okay, let's switch to leadership and management. Are they the same thing?
People often use them interchangeably, but the source draws a distinction. They're complementary, but different. Management is more about the operational side, planning, organizing, controlling, keeping the trains running on time.
Okay. And leadership?
Leadership is more about vision, inspiration, driving change, setting direction, motivating people to follow. You really need both for success.
So you could be a great manager, very organized, but maybe not inspire people,
Yeah.
or vice versa.
Exactly. And there's a whole spectrum of leadership styles, right? From authoritarian, making all the decisions,
Way or the highway?
to democratic, involving the group,
Mm-hmm.
to laissez-faire, very hands-off. The idea of a continuum suggests the best style often depends on the situation.
Which leads to contingency theories, I guess. The idea that effectiveness depends on context.
Precisely. Theories like Fiedler's path goal theory, Hersey Blanchard's situational leadership, the Vroom-Yetton model, they all basically say a leader's effectiveness is contingent on factors in the situation.
Like what kind of factors?
Things like the leader-team relationship, how clear the task is, the maturity or readiness of the followers. It's about matching the style to the context.
Finding the right fit. The source also mentions the shadow of leadership. What's that?
The shadow of leadership. It refers to the less visible, often unspoken parts of leadership. The informal behaviors, the unintended consequences of decisions, the ethical tone a leader sets, even implicitly. It's their broader impact, good or bad.
Interesting. It's not just about the formal stuff. And what about the managerial grid and theory Y?
Right, the grid plot styles based on concern for production versus concern for people. The ideal is often seen as high on both team management style.
Balancing task and people.
Exactly. And Theory X and Theory Y are about the manager's underlying assumptions about people. Theory X assumes people are lazy, need control. Theory Y assumes people are motivated, seek responsibility. These beliefs really shape how a manager leads.
Hugely influential assumptions. Okay, moving towards control and power. Why is organizational control so important?
Well, control is essential for making sure activities line up with goals and for driving performance improvements. It's the mechanism for keeping things on track, spotting problems, taking corrective action.
And it's not just top-down rules, is it? There are different elements of control.
That's right. Control works through multiple things. The formal structure, yes, but also the culture, the norms, the technology used, incentive systems, how behavior is monitored. It's multifaceted.
A whole system. And power within organizations, what are the main types?
The text distinguishes between position power that comes with the job title, the formal authority,
The boss.
yeah, and personal or informal power based on charisma, expertise, influence, networks, regardless of formal position.
You can have influence without the title. And empowerment and delegation, how do they fit with control?
They're closely linked. Empowerment is about giving subordinates the authority, the discretion to make decisions and act. Delegation is assigning tasks and responsibilities.
Letting go a bit.
Yes, but it requires balance, giving autonomy while maintaining necessary oversight, and crucially, ensuring authority matches responsibility. You can't hold someone accountable if they don't have the power to act.
Makes sense. Okay, second to last, big topic. Technology. It's everywhere, changing constantly.
Absolutely pervasive. And the pace is just accelerating, driving new products, services, new ways of working, fundamentally changing how we interact.
And the impact on skills. De-skilling versus upskilling. That debate's been around a while.
It has. One view, tech reduces skills needed for many jobs. Another view, new tech demands new, higher-level skills to manage it. A third view, it's mixed. Some jobs de-skilled, others upskilled.
So no simple answer.
Probably depends heavily on the industry, the specific roles, how the tech is implemented.
And tech also affects job design, job quality.
Definitely. The idea of the social construction of technology is important here. It says the impact isn't just inherent in the tech itself, it's shaped by organizational choices, social factors. Well, tech can empower workers, give more autonomy, but it can also lead to more surveillance, more monitoring, which raises concerns about job quality, stress, well-being.
That ability to monitor everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. What about social media in the workplace?
Opportunities and risks there. Good for recruitment, marketing, internal comms, can amplify employee voice,
Hmm.
but also concerns about productivity, managing the company's reputation online, blurring lines between personal and professional life. Interestingly, some research suggests people find autonomy online that they lack at work.
A way to get some control back and free labor through interactive tech. What's that?
That's the trend of self-service. Customers doing tasks employees used to do. Self-checkouts, online forms.
I do it all the time.
Right. It offers convenience, sure, but it shifts workload, changes the interaction, raises questions about who's doing the work, where the value is.
Hadn't thought of it as free labor before. And the impact on stress, work-life balance, eye disorder.
Yeah, the constant connectivity.
Yeah.
Hard to switch off. Pressure to be always available, always responsive, blurs work-life boundaries. That potential eye disorder, the struggle to disconnect, is a growing challenge for well-being.
The always-on culture, big challenge. Okay, final area. The broader environment, ethics, performance. Organizations don't exist in a bubble, right?
Absolutely not. They operate in a complex external environment. Understanding pestle factors, political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental, is crucial.
And they have stakeholders.
Yes, various stakeholders.
Yeah.
Anyone with an interest or affected by the organization, employees, customers, suppliers, community, shareholders.
Which brings us to CSR, corporate social responsibility. Seems more important than ever.
It is. CSR means considering the organization's impact on society, the environment, beyond just profit. Different views exist, from focusing only on shareholders to considering all stakeholders. Ethics, human rights, increasingly seen as core.
Operating responsibly and mission statements, codes of ethics, do they actually work?
Their effectiveness varies. A mission statement can provide direction, but it can seem like just PR if actions don't match. Codes of ethics offer guidance, but impact depends on communication, implementation, leadership buy-in.
Actions speak louder. Ultimately, organizations care about performance, effectiveness. How are these defined?
Generally, by how well the organization achieves its goals. It's multifaceted. Financial results, yes, but also customer satisfaction, innovation, employee engagement.
Employee engagement, key factor.
Huge factor. Engaged employees committed, enthusiastic, drive overall performance. And the idea of a learning organization, one that continuously improves and adapts, is vital for long-term effectiveness.
So it's a holistic view, not just the bottom line.
Precisely. Creating an environment for engagement and learning is crucial for sustained success.
Well, we have certainly covered a lot of ground, a real deep dive into organizational behavior. It's fascinating just how many different factors shape how we all function at work.
It really is complex, isn't it? And some things really stand out, like that potential dark side of emotional intelligence.
Right. And the idea that resistance to change isn't always negative.
Or that inverted view of Maslow's hierarchy. And definitely the unique challenges of managing virtual teams today.
It just highlights how understanding the human side of organizations is, well, incredibly complex, but so essential for making workplaces productive and hopefully positive places to be.
Absolutely.
This deep dive gives a great foundation, I think, and we really encourage you, listening, to reflect on these ideas in your own experiences.
Definitely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Given how rapidly work and organizations are changing, which of these fundamental principles of organizational behavior do you think will be the most critical in the coming years? And maybe, how can individuals proactively navigate that tricky psychological contract in their own careers? Something to ponder.